All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we are going to be talking about the Renaissance. We're going to talk about some of the artists during that time, how you get distinct, the difference between the two, between Middle Age and Renaissance. And also, we're going to look at the writings of Niccolo Machiavelli and some of the questions that he brought up that were pretty interesting at that time. So, let's go ahead and look at the objective. Analyze how the term Renaissance has more than one meaning. Okay? We're going to examine the difference between Dark Age and Renaissance art, like I said earlier, and we're going to create an argument on whether Niccolo Machiavelli has an argument about people. We're going to get into that at the very, very end. And this is one I want you guys to really try to take a moment and think about it. It's a really, really insightful question. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the warm up. All right, so here it is for you. The first question asks you basically, about these angels. Okay. Why do you think some people have seen these before? A lot of students have told me, yeah, my aunt has this on like tissue boxes and, as home decoration stuff. Um, so why do you think these two angels are so famous? A lot of students have told me, I've seen that before somewhere. I can't remember where, but I've seen it. It's a very famous painting, but you're going to find out in a second it's a very small part of the painting. The second question asks you, what do you think they're doing? Do you think they're like waiting for something? Do you think they're kind of thinking about something, contemplating? Do you think they're just bored? What do you think? And why do you say that? Okay, so go ahead. Oh, wait, let me show you the big picture really quickly. There it is. That's the whole painting. But everyone focuses on those two little angels at the very, very bottom. So it's pretty interesting, that the beautiful painting, which is absolutely amazing, but everyone focuses on those angels at the bottom. So why do you think they made it? Why do you think they're so famous? Okay, so pause the video, write your responses, but we're moving on in three, two, one. So here's the thing. After the Black Death, the church lost its power, it lost its authority over people. So if you forgot about the whole plague and what was that about, um, watch the last video about the bubonic plague, the Black Death. But in a nutshell, the people, the peasants back in during the Dark Ages, they had nothing. All they had was the church. And during that time, the church turned their backs on them, told them, yeah, we're not going to give you the last rites. We're not going to hear your confession. To those peasants, their soul was condemned to hell. So they kind of like, well, we have nothing now. And those who survived the plague did not forget that the church turned their backs on their mom, their dad, their cousin, brother, even there might be only wife and children or husband and stuff like that. So those who survived did not forget. So when it was all over, the church is trying to be like, hey, well, you guys should listen to us and things like that. And they're like, why? Why should we listen to you? You weren't there for us when we needed you. Um, and the church basically tried to tell them things. Hey, you should do this, you should do that. And people are like, no, we're not going to listen to you no more. So this is where the Dark Ages starts to turn to the Renaissance. The word Renaissance literally means rebirth. Okay, it's a new age, it's a new time, and people are rediscovering themselves in a sense. It started off in Italy and eventually just blossomed all over through Europe. Now, the thing is, with this, cities became very wealthy. Cities were the places to go. There was no longer agricultural work and stuff like that. No, no, no. Cities were the places to be. There was jobs, there was industry, people got paid well, people were living their best lives and type of things like that. Um, Now, what was reborn through all this? Basically, those people look back and said, you know what? Those Greeks, those Romans, they had it good. They had a good thing going. Philosophy, art, literature, you know, where did it go wrong? Why after Rome fell, why did everything go bad? Why did the top people want to make sure that the bottom people were not educated? Because they wanted them dumb. They wanted them just to work and not question. Because that was a workforce. They could basically control them if they kept them dumb. If they told them, if you do this, if you go against us, God will strike you. They use that fear of the unknown to scare them into doing things what they wanted them to do. Now that the people were not scared, you know, now they were just like, okay, well, we should go back to how things were. Let's focus on literature. Let's focus on philosophy. Let's focus on art. Okay. So speaking of art, on your paper there's a box. It says Middle Age and Renaissance. Okay. I'm going to go through and explain the difference between the two. Okay. Now, if you look at the top pictures, those are Middle Age pictures. If you look at the bottom two, those are Renaissance. Okay. The Middle Age paintings, as you can see, they're very two-dimensional. They're very like that. There's not really much like depth going on. It's just kind of bam, that's it. Kind of like they're like that. So it's 2D. It's two-dimensional. Whereas the paintings on the bottom, the Renaissance, they're three-dimensional. There's depth. Look at the that bottom picture of the lady cutting the dude's throat. They're the like sheets, or whatever you want to call them, in the background. Look at how it curves and things like that. It looks like you could actually touch it and grab it. Whereas the top one doesn't look like you could really touch and grab. It looks kind of bam, that's it. There's not much detail to the stuff. You know. The next thing is the realistic part of it. So if you look at the top picture, when's the last time you saw someone with a gold circle around their head? When's the last time you walked around and saw angels just kneeling down when they saw somebody? Yeah, yeah. Usually don't see that around. Do you see someone getting is it a possibility of someone getting their throat slit? Probably. There's a depiction of Jesus right there. So yeah, yeah. The top ones are not real realistic. The bottom ones look very realistic. Okay. The other thing is the proportions are not that great. You know, the proportion of the people to the whole body and things like that, it's not very good. It's not very accurate. Whereas the bottom ones, the body proportions are very much accurate. You know, um, someone doesn't have a big old long nose. They don't have their eyes, really wide and things like that. So that's a couple of other things. Um, let's see. The other thing is the top ones are very religious like. They're very religious. They tell a story, things like that. Again, the holy people, angels, things like that. The bottom one, they just, bam, there you go. What it is, what it is, whatever the painting may be. Somebody slit the dude's throat, okay. You know. And the last thing is, which is you see on the notes there, the Middle Age, a lot of times they did those paintings and collages and things like that as of like, I don't want the credit. I made this to honor God. That's what they focused on. This was created to honor God. Whereas the Renaissance was, no, I created this so I can get recognized for my skill. That's what it was about. Hey, look, I made that. That's awesome. You know. So, excuse me. That's what it was. Middle Age focused on religion and that the artists did this stuff to honor God, whereas the Renaissance, not as religious, yeah, here and there, sure, but not totally 100% religious. And also the artists put their names to the painting, so they wanted recognition for it. All right, so here's your first question. How does the term Renaissance, again, rebirth, how does it have more than one meaning in this case? In what ways is there a rebirth? Okay, so take a minute, sit down, and really think about this. How is there more than one meaning to a rebirth during this time of the Renaissance? Okay, so think of the old ways and how are they things are changing. Okay, so pause the video. Okay, but we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so during the Renaissance, there was these very famous people. They were known as the Renaissance men. These guys were not only painters, but they were sculptors and writers, mathematicians, inventors, things like that. And that's what a Renaissance man is. Somebody who's not just good at one thing, but a lot of things. You know, a lot of things. Again, when I mean a lot of things, it's not just like, oh, they're good at writing this, writing poetry, writing this. No, okay, writing is one thing, but another thing like building, creating, things like that. The first one, right off the back, hands down, true definition of Renaissance man, Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci was a painter, a sculptor, an architect, inventor, mathematician. The dude did it all. Okay, we will be talking about him specifically in about another week or so. Okay, the top picture you see with the Jesus and the Virgin Mary, that is Da Vinci's sculpture. That's made of marble, by the way. That's, yeah, it's really absolutely amazing to see. The next one, his name was Michelangelo, but his whole name, and I'm gonna kill this, forgive me, Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. That was like his whole name. I'm sure I mispronounced it. I know I probably killed it. I'm sorry, but what he did, sculptor, painter, architect, and he was a poet. Okay. The next one, Raphael Giovanni Santi. He was a painter and an architect. He actually was the architect for some churches in Rome. Next one, Sandro Botticelli. He was a painter. And the last one was this sculptor named Donatello. If you see that bottom picture of a little kid, that's what he made. And I believe it's marble as well. And if you look, it's like, how did he make that look flawless? It looks like it's plastic, but it's actually made of marble. It's amazing. All right, so here's the thing. Now it comes to the point where it's like, you know what? We don't need these little tiny kingdoms here and there. These cities, they could basically take care of themselves. You know, they don't need, a king to gather soldiers and stuff like that. These big cities can take care of themselves. They can have their own soldiers. They have their own walls. They're self-sufficient. They don't need a king. These city-states were independent and they could handle their own. So this kind of showed the world like, hey, we don't need kings. We can take care of ourselves. So the whole, yeah, there could be a king for a whole country, but a bunch of other little tiny kings all around, oh, I own this territory, those days are gone. Okay. Now, Milan, Venice, Florence, these towns blew up. These were the three biggest cities um, in that time. Milan, again, started off small, bam, blew up. Same thing with Venice and Florence. They became the focal point in that time during the Renaissance. People wanted to know what's the newest art. They would go to those places. What's the newest music? Those areas. Fashion. They go to those places. Music, things like that. They were the hub of what's new, what's good, what's coming out, things like that. Okay, Italian port cities, they made profit from these crusades and things like that, so they were making pretty good money. They were bringing it from trade and stuff like that, so they were making quite a bit of money. Now, just like any place that grows from nothing to something, usually there's some type of organization, group, company, or family that grows as well. And in this case, there's three families that grew just as those three cities did. The Visconti, the Forza, and I'm gonna kill this. I keep messing this up. Medici, something like that. I'm killing it. I'm sorry. Those three families blew up and got big themselves. Basically, they were just like the Rockefellers and the rich people that nobody messed with. If you had that last name, you basically got what you wanted in life. Now, during this time, there's one book that comes out that's very influential, and it had a ripple effect from that point to even to now. And it was a book called The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. And yes, Machiavelli, we're not talking about Tupac. This is the real Machiavelli. Okay. Now, in his book, he says several things. Number one thing, he talks about how to acquire and keep political power. He basically shows you, hey, this is how it is. This is how you get political power. This is how you keep it. This is how you maintain it. He goes on to say, the old way of thinking is over. In the forms of morals, no, no, it should be in all rulers, but the whole thing of, oh, you have to be totally good, to be a good ruler, you can't do anything bad. He's kind of like, we'll get to that in a second. He also said again, morals has little to do with politics. When it comes to politics, hey, sometimes you got to get things done. And it doesn't matter if you're going to be seen as a bad guy or you have to make some really tough decisions. That's what you got to do. Um, the attitude towards power based on human nature, basically saying people are self-centered. He goes, everything we decide to do, it's going to benefit us some way or another. Okay, we'll get to this part again in a second. He says that the acts of these leaders should be on behalf of the state. They should take their own personal desires and stuff of that. Take that out of it. You're there to serve the state, not for your glory, your personal gain, and things like that. You know, excuse me. And the last part he says is do good when necessary, or sorry, do good when possible, evil when necessary. Okay, that part I really like. Oh wow, that's that part when I first read the book. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Do good when possible, evil if necessary. Okay. Now this is the part I want you guys to really honestly stop. Do not write. Take a moment to listen to what I'm going to tell you and think to yourself. Okay. He says on this book, he believes that human nature, that people, we are self-centered. I want to know if you think this is true, yes or no. Now, before you start writing and stuff like that, before you pause the video, hear me out on this. Um, I had a conversation with my girlfriend about this, and she tried to tell me, no, no, people do good things to help other people. For example, some people, give out food during a Thanksgiving break. It's like, okay, yeah, but why do they do it? So that they feel good. Why do people give clothing or money to poor people? Why? Because hey, they feel sorry for them, so they give them something so that person they can feel good about themselves. Like, hey, I helped out. So he's saying basically everything we do is self-centered. We do things for ourselves. Why do you do things? It's for you, either one way for you to feel self-gratification, that you feel good for yourself. You do things for the thrill, whatever it may be, you know. You do things for your own profit, whether it's um, situation or money or whatever. Everything we do, every decision we make, it's about for ourselves. If you really boil it down, okay. Now, again, I want you to sit down and think something you've done for other people, and things like that. And why did you make that decision? Ultimately, why did you make that decision? And how did you benefit from this? Now, again, it doesn't necessarily have to mean like, oh, did this for you, I should get money, or I got money for this. Even if it's something internal or something you like, I think, I believe, I feel. Again, that's self-serving. So I want you to really sit down and think, is he right? Is everything we do basically, in a sense, for ourselves? Are we self-centered people? Okay, so write your response now, pause the video, really think about it, and get ready to move on because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So now we've come to the end of this lesson. You're going to answer one of these three questions, okay? Just one, okay? The first one says, after what happened with the Black Death, was a renaissance bound to happen? Were people going to be like, you know what, we need to change our lives, things like that? Again, remember how they lived back as peasants. The Black Death happened. Do you think people were going to want a better life because of that now? Now that, again, a lot of people are dead, people need workers, things like that. Do you think a renaissance was going to happen? Okay. The second question says, what are some possible meanings when Machiavelli said, do good when possible, evil if necessary? What do you think he means by that? What do you think? The third question asks you, what are two differences between the Middle Age art and the Renaissance art? Okay, so you may want to go back to your notes and answer that. Once you've answered those questions, you are done with this class, done with this lesson. Okay, you guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned something new. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. I really do. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Take care. You be safe. All right.